We are going to learn a bit about Kariúki. Godfrey Gitahi wa Kariúki. When I set up to talk, I'd set to talk about such individuals and political assassinations. But you know, political assassination is limited, especially now that the political environment is so changed that we are having few, if none, of political assassinations. But prominent Kenyans who took part in our history will increase with every generation. We have some people whom I did not include in my list, but because people have been asking me to comment about those people, then first of all I go to Google. Then from Google, like this one, after you have watched, you'll find that I am 10 or even 15 times more informative than Google. After Google and whatever, I then feed my desktop computer and things come up. There are so many requests that have been sent. There are some people who are even requesting me twice or thrice. Once you tell me, or even twice, I already take note. And I will only upload something when I have enough information. So if your person has not appeared, kindly wait, or maybe not all political deaths are assassinations. Yes, somebody may be killed, homicide, but it has no political connotation. So I don't see why I should even talk about that. There are even cases of somebody taking Viagra and him dying, and he was prominent. His death had nothing at all to do with politics and whatever. I can only comment about the role he played in the country, but not all deaths should be associated with political assassinations. And also note that as time goes on, political assassinations are being reduced by day. So you'll find that I'll continue talking more on prominent people, unique prominent people, and the role they played in Kenya's history. Kariúki, or Godfrey Gitahi wa Kariúki, wrote a book called Illusion of Power. There is no better title he would have given his book. I've seen so many books, you have seen so many books, and I can tell you that Kariúki's life, especially in the final days of his political life, was in such a way that he had illusions of power. And it is very sorrowful because he is one of the politicians who had stayed. You remember being in politics for almost continuously 50 years. Tell me anybody who has done that. Very few. He stayed for 50 years in politics, most of which were almost always continuous. So for him to reach a place and be made Minister of State in the office of the President and have illusions that he's powerful, then that is sadness. I have already recorded a video concerning Minister of State in the office of the President. You can still watch that because this one is specifically on Godfrey Gitahi wa Kariúki, Kariúki. Gigi Kariúki entered politics in 1952 during the emergency. He was a teenager then, 13 or 14 years, when he joined Kenya African Union. When he joined Kenya African Union, after the emergency and independence appearing on the horizon, Godfrey Gitahi Kariúki joined KANU and did not join KADU. When he joined KANU, he went and contested Laikipia East constituency. He went and contested Laikipia East constituency. 1964, Jackson Harvester Angaine was made Minister for Lands and Settlement. JJ Kariúki, Lingala Gigi tunaita JJ. Gigi Kariúki was made the Assistant Minister for Lands and Settlement. When he was made the Minister for Lands and Settlement in 1964, that is now when settlement started. And I want to tell Kenyans this, to have, we don't have to reason today like reasoning using the constitution of today, while forgetting that we had the pre-2010 constitution and we were there. So if anything happened, let's say in 2008, we have to reason with that environment of that time. So what happened immediately after independence, I want you to look at it this way, and I'll have a special recording from Mpeketoni, because my own father as a police officer was involved in Mpeketoni. But there was a lot of settlement here and there where Gema tribes, especially Kikuyu, settled elsewhere, especially in the Rift Valley. Now, there were 3 types of settlement where Kikuyu settled in Rift Valley. The first settlement was when the government set up, Kenyatta rushed and became friendly with the British. He went to Nakuru Municipal Hall and addressed the Wazungus and said that land will be sold to willing buyer and willing seller. And we had some Kaburus who did not want to be ruled by African. Just imagining that he'll be in Kenya where the head of state will be an African, they moved out. There are those Boas, the family of the former president, the late president of South Africa, Frederick de Klerk, Frederick de Klerk. Frederick de Klerk have connections with Eldoret. I have recorded the church where Frederick de Klerk's grandfather was a pastor in that church in Eldoret. Those of you who are in Eldoret, you go to 64 Stadium, huko nyuma utapata, there is a very small church, Redeemed Gospel, and when I went to record it, people were wondering why the Redeemed Church hawajai modernize, wamekaacha kamekuwa kadogo, and it is so beautiful and so on. But I told them that it is connected to President de Klerk. So there are those Boers who are staying in Eldoret who went to South Africa. We have Britons who went back to Britain. So land was being found there. And I want you to take it this way. There is a program which started which was called SFT. SFT was called Settlement Fund Trustee. This was assisting Africans acquire land in the White Highlands. But the information was never given to all tribes. It was mostly, look at the Ministry of Lands and Settlement. Nowadays it's called Lands, but those days it used to be called Land and Settlement. It was a ministry to settle people into those lands. The minister was Jackson Harvester Angaine, Amumeru. The assistant minister was Gigi Kariúki. So these people, most of the information over 75% were passed to these people. On the other hand, Masinde Muliro was busy settling Bukusus in Trans Nzoia. So most of the tribes were given little or no information, and Kikuyus were experiencing what we are now, which every tribe is now facing, a land issue. If you see the land that, if you go to your royal home and see who occupied the land in 1964, compare it to 2024, then see how it has been subdivided, some sold and whatever. So other tribes faced land issues decades after independence, but Kikuyu started having it. And then the Kikuyus were told, and Kikuyus were given favorable land issues. For example, they were given good land, SFT, such and such things. So you find that the Kikuyus came the first wave that way. The initial wave was those people who used to be employed by Wazungu with their farm. So when Wazungus were going, they gave some of the land to those who used to work for them. Then the second wave is now the one I'm saying, where SFT and other such financial institutions assisted the people to come. On the other hand, let us look at the Kalenjins and other tribes. Of course, in one of the tapes I'll talk about, somebody has asked me to talk about the Maasais in Laikipia, where even in the population, and you see Laikipia is where Kariúki was, you'd find that before independence, the Maasais in Laikipia were about 50,000 people. But now, which is a population of about 70%, let me now talk of the percentage, which is about 70% of the African in that area. But now you find Kina Ole Kaparo, they can hardly form 7% of the population there. I will carry up another tape concerning that issue. Somebody has asked me, how comes that the Maasais moved out of Laikipia? That one I will come up with another tape. Now concerning Gigi came even with a specific program which he called 5 acres for 20 shillings, where you paid 20 shillings and you are given 5 acres. Now it is not that you are given you pay 20 shillings and you are given, that is the deposit. If you compare, the shamba then was going about 2,000 shillings and you are paying 20 shillings. That is if you divide 2,000 by 20, you'll come up with that, and then look for the today's market price and divide with that percentage. 20 over 2,000, that goes is 10 over 1,000, then 1 over, that is, they were paying 1% of the land value. So hiyo ingine wanachanga pole pole. This issue was good, but it was directed on one tribe only. And again, other tribes, if you look at other tribes, including my own tribe, people who had land at that time had large lands, and those who knew were wondering, why should I need more land and I still have big land? That is what happened at that time, and that is what happened at that time, and that is why the people stayed there. We have been having problems, these tribal clashes, and every time it is solved in a very simple way. You find a leader of, let's say, Kalenjin and the leader of Kikuyus at that time, wanakuja wanaungana, and then wanakaa pamoja, the tribes. We should start from bottom up. We have the NCIC. They should go to the field, have regular communication with these people. Make these people understand each other, especially telling these people moved out of Central long time ago. They even don't know where they came from. And their grandfathers are buried here, their fathers are buried here. Then they try to accept the condition. We don't do that. We just Look for tribal. You see, Uhuru, 2013, talked to Ruto. So he was happy that he has convinced all Kalenjins. Then next, he had a handshake with Raila. And then believed that, according to Uhuru's thought, that I've talked to the Kalenjin leader, nimemweka kwa box. Nimeongea na Luo leader, nimemweka kwa box. So he was wondering why. Kindly go to the ground, talk to the people. Now, Kariúki continued that way, and we had this change. Kiika Kimani came up with this change the constitution thing, of which were targeted at Daniel Arap Moi not taking over as the president. Now, the person, Njonjo, Kariúki, and others, this is now a tape on Kariúki. They stood by Moi. So when Moi took over in 1978, he paid back. But he did not, Kariúki also fell on the list of Njonjo. Because, yes, Njonjo and Kibaki assisted Moi to take over. But after Moi had taken over, Njonjo was basically the president. And for Moi to rule, for Moi to enter State House, if you know the story of the Ngamia and the tent, for Moi to rule State House, he had to come up with a theory that he atafuata nyayo ya Jomo Kenyatta. Now he killed a lot of birds with one stone in 82 attempted coup. He had an excuse of abandoning kufuata nyayo ya Jomo Kenyatta. He had an excuse of abandoning Njonjo. And abandoning Njonjo meant he was abandoning who? Kariúki. So, that is how Kariúki's downfall came. And the other thing, I remember we had a teacher at Special Branch Training School whom we used to call Professor. I can't recall his name, but we had a professor in Nairobi University who had the similar name. So we used to call this one a professor. He had an Ectop computer better than mine 20 times. He's the one who used to tell us that Kariúki, you know Kariúki, but mostly Kariúki, although occasionally Njonjo would board the limousine, but in many cases we used to see Kariúki, and he used to tell us, unaona Kariúki anaingia hiyo limousine, hiyo ni mtego. The mtego comes this way. One, if you have an enemy, you keep away from the enemy. You don't even be 5 meters near him. So when you want to kill that enemy, you can't. But you see, a friend will come, he will hug you, but he has a knife and he'll stab your back and you'll die. So bringing Kariúki, Godfrey Gitahi Kariúki, bringing him very close to an extent that he would do anything he wanted, was trying to bring him close and make him very close. I have not read the book Illusion of Power, but I read in the Daily Nation the excerpt of that, and and I read somewhere where Kariúki was saying that some foreign embassy, there was the intelligence attaché who went and requested for something from him as the Minister for State in the office of the President. And when he was told as the Minister for State in the office of the President, he refused. And the foreign country just did that, irrespective of whatever his feeling was. And he was wondering, before he died, he was saying he used to think that he was in charge of the ministry in the office of the President, but it came to be not that way. We have had very powerful ministers of state in the office of the President. You can see that video I've done. For you to be made Minister of State in the office of the President is not that you are given power on a silver platter. Hata ukifika huko, you have to fight for your space. You have to fight for your space. And you can see how people, today the office is called Minister for Internal Security. It has security of tenure to some extent, because as a minister for internal security, you have a portfolio. But Minister of State in the office of the President, you are a senior assistant minister. So, being called a Minister of State in the office of the President or any other ministry does not give you power. Look at the way Professor Kindiki is behaving, and look at the way Dr. Matiang'i was behaving. It is your behavior that defines what you do in that office. Your behavior. Sasa ukikaa kama Jiji Kariúki na ngoja uletewe kwa meza, then that is that. And then you also have to consider that Jiji Kariúki, when he was a Minister for State in the office of there were three. There was Jackson Kalweo, and there was Nicholas Biwott. So these people would make noise, mean your minister, but you see Minister of State who are powerful, kina Mbio Koinange, kina nani. It has something to do with the closeness with the President. And the Ministry of State, as I've said, you are just a mere senior assistant minister. That is why Gigi was. Finally, I have to say, we have some ministries where you are called the minister, but the President is the minister. I have talked about Office of the President, which is no longer there. So if you are the Minister of Office of the President, you are a senior assistant minister. Everything was for the President, because it was his ministry. The other ministry where the President had power was the Ministry of Finance. You see, the Ministry of Finance, if you don't rhyme with the President, you see, the President has to control the way finances go. So you have to do things while looking over. Even if you have a minister, even if you have a president like Kibaki. You know, Kibaki, I could say today that Kibaki is the president who left his ministers to run their ministries the way they wanted, or the way they were hired. But a person like Moi, he would be the minister, but he would also be running that ministry. But on paper, if you are the Minister for Finance, you have to constantly conduct the President so that your financial projection does not go against the President. 2, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You are the Minister for Foreign Affairs. Actually, you are the most traveled person, because you travel. When the government says reduce foreign trips, it does not affect the Minister of Foreign Affairs. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, whenever the President goes out, the Minister for Foreign Affairs has to go. Whenever the Minister for Foreign Affairs has to go on his own, so you find the Minister for Foreign Affairs mostly is out of the country. But you find that all ambassadors, look at, especially, we have 2 types of ambassadors. We have professional ambassadors, not just in Kenya, world over. We have professional ambassadors, people who started from the ground, the ministry rose up and became ambassadors. And we have politicians. Now that is where the President now, wakati ameapishwa, he's giving out things to people, he makes some people be ambassadors. So there are some ministries where, yes, you are the minister for that ministry, but apart from your personal staff, everything is done by the President. You remember Gigi Kariúki was saying that there are some things which were in his docket, which he would just read them in the Kenya Gazette or even in the dailies. And that for you is the story of Godfrey Gitahi wa Kariúki.